guys, my name is Barbara Fernandez. I'm a bilingual speech-language pathologist, and today I want to talk to my fellow bilingual SLPs on assessing articulation and phonology. For the majority of my professional career, I spent most of the time assessing articulation and language of bilingual students. I remember coming in and spending time with those outdated paper materials to assess articulation and also language. You know, the children really didn't like those images. They were boring paper materials. Today, kids are constantly exposed to technology. They expect so much more to keep them engaged in the assessment. The iPad comes in as an amazing tool to really keep the students engaged. Now, getting them engaged and actually having the tool to do an assessment are two completely different things. You know, it's very easy to come up with various materials for therapy, but for assessment, we need a reliable tool that is actually going to measure what's supposed to be measuring. Another thing that we have is the need for assessing both languages, assessing English and Spanish. We know the best practice requires us to assess both languages when we're assessing a bilingual student coming from a bilingual background or being exposed to different languages. In this case today, I want to focus on my Spanish-speaking students. So we're going to be assessing English and Spanish. We're coming into two assessments, two different languages, and of course, we always have to have protocols handy. And the BAPA, which is an assessment for the iPad, which stands for the Bilingual Articulation and Phonology Assessment. It's available in the App Store. And it really has changed the way bilingual SLPs are assessing these bilingual students everywhere in the country. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to get my iPad. This here is an iPad that is showing one of the screens of BAPA, but I have another iPad here and we're going to take a look at BAPA today. So here's my iPad. Now I want to make sure you guys can actually see the screen here. And as soon as I start the app, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a student. We're going to enter here the name. I'm going to put in Barbara as a student. Then we're going to enter the date of birth. I'm going to pick here just a random date, tap done. Then we're going to select the languages. You can see here that we have three options. We have the option of selecting a language of Spanish, then we have English, or we have both. The amazing thing about BAPA is that it was standardized in three different groups. We have monolingual English only speakers with no bilingual background whatsoever. Then we also have students that are coming from a bilingual home, and also we have students that are only exposed to English. Their only language they're speaking is English. So we have three different groups that you select on the app. So if you're not a bilingual SLP, you can also use this app to assess your English only speaker, your English only student. However, for that, you can also use ITAP, which is an English only assessment that is designed for your monolingual English students. But let's go ahead and get back here to business. Let's select both. We are assessing a bilingual student today and we are tapping done. Now, this is the fantastic thing about the app, the dialectal influence. You can see here we have a variety of dialectal influence from Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Cuba. And what it's doing here, the app actually has speakers from different countries record the audio on the app. So as the student taps and gets that model, it's actually hearing an audio from a speaker from that country. So the audio that the student from Puerto Rico hears is different from the student from Mexico. So these are completely different audio files. At the end also, we will provide information on each dialect of Spanish on the app so that the therapist, not only you who did the assessment, but also the clinician that is actually reading the report later on and throughout the life of the student will have access to that dialect information that we always must take into consideration when we're making decisions for services for a specific child. So for the purpose of this assessment, I'm going to go ahead and select Mexico. I'm going to tap done and I'm going to tap done. Now my student has been added here, Barbara, Mexico, 3 years, 2 months of age. The app automatically calculates the age of the child. BAPA has been standardized ages 3 to 11. So if you have younger students, you can still use this, or older student, you can still use this app as a qualitative measure, but you will not be getting standardization information, standard score, percentile rank, and so on and so forth when you get the results after you complete the assessment. But let's now take a look at the assessment and see the magic happen on the screen. So here I'm gonna go ahead and select Barbara, and I'm gonna tap New Assessment. Now I have the option of starting the assessment in Spanish or English. This is another point that I want to stop and pause you. We know that at times we have students that come from a bilingual background that either don't speak enough English for us to actually do a complete assessment of articulation and phonology in English. We also have the other group where you have students that are coming from a bilingual background but don't have enough Spanish or don't have enough vocabulary in Spanish for us to even continue an articulation phonology assessment in Spanish. The fact that a student comes from a Spanish background doesn't necessarily mean that he actually is proficient in Spanish. You will show a picture, let's say for a dog, and you will you're expecting to get an assessment, let's say for P or the middle R for perro, but to end up with dog. This is not a language assessment where we would take either one. We're actually looking to assess the sounds. So we really want them to say perro. But if they actually don't know the label, it becomes impossible to continue performing that assessment in that specific language. If you're not aware of the proficiency of the student, the app will actually take care of that problem. So let's say if we select Spanish to begin with. We're gonna tap on the image if you wanna give the student a model.
Fun.
This speaker here is actually a speaker from Mexico. He says pun. You have the target word transcribed at the top, and you have the word also at the bottom. You can turn off the written word if you don't want the student to listen. And if the student said the word pun correctly, we move on.
Baño.
Now we have the second image, baño. If the student said año as opposed to baño, you tap on the B, and we have options here. You can mark a substitution, you can mark a distortion, a deletion, and also all the phonological processes, backing, devoicing, and assimilation. The app will only display the phonological processes that are associated with that specific phoneme. So for example, for D, we're not gonna display gliding because nobody glides a D. So for B, in this case, the student said año, I'm gonna mark a deletion. And look what happened. Now the screen actually took out that B. So you're live making the transcriptions, marking the errors directly on the transcription on the screen. And since we are here, one great feature is the ability to record voice. So if you tap here on the voice recording, we mark OK, the app now starts to record everything that you're doing. You have the option on the settings of recording individual words or recording the entire assessment for you to access at a later time. I'm going to press stop here for the purpose of this video. There's no need for me to record. I'm going to move on to the next one.
Manos.
Manos. The student said it nanos. We're going to tap on the M, and here is my favorite part of the assessment. For mark substitution. Now you're able to actually select the sound that the student actually produced. So if the student said nanos, look at this. Now, right on the screen, you have the word nanos. I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking that it might take too long for you to be marking these things, taking away the iPad from the student to mark these things. The more you do, actually, if you just do a couple practice runs before you do the assessment, you will see how this will go extremely fast. One other thing that is really phenomenal with the app, you see here, usually we sit across the table from a student. I have here my transcription at the top is also facing the student. But if I'm sitting across, I can always tap on this rotate button here. And look at this. Now the word is upside down. I'm sitting like this. Anything that I tap will also be upside down to the student. However, the student can see the image facing them while you see the words and all the administrator information towards you. We'll actually facilitate to tap on the individual errors, the individual phonemes that are displayed there, and make everything go real smooth and super fast in tracking that production. I'm gonna go ahead and continue on to show you, one of the things that I also let the students do is actually let them swipe. As they swipe the screens, it's almost letting them, this is their reward. You get to say the word and you swipe it. You know the magic of the iPad. The students are super excited just to actually get to swipe between the words.
Galleta.
Now, after you've presented 7 words to that student, the one thing that you will notice is this pop up here. And what it says and what's asking is the student performing well enough in this language for us to continue this assessment? And this goes back to what we talked earlier. Some students don't have proficiency in English or one language or the other. And you here, if you tap no to the student is not performing well, so if you presented the word conejo, perro, toalla, and the student was constantly saying them in English, despite your attempt to redirect him to say Spanish, you can always terminate one language, and this works vice versa. If you had started in English, the app will ask you if he's performing well. If you say no, the app automatically takes you to the second language, automatically takes you to Spanish if you started English. In here, if you also started with Spanish and the student can't produce those words, you mark no and the app automatically takes you to English. For this case, I'm gonna mark yes so that you can see what happens. Oh, I'm gonna mark no. So the student is not performing well, meaning the student cannot label any of these words in Spanish. So once I swipe it again, now we have the word
Bed.
bed, English, and the transcription is in English. Everything you see is in English. We at least attempted the assessment in both languages. So we attempted to perform the Spanish articulation assessment. However, the student couldn't couldn't continue the assessment. Now, the fabulous thing here is that we're noting that you actually attempted to do this assessment in both languages, which is something that the app automatically will address at the end. The evaluator attempted both languages. However, the student's proficiency in that language wasn't well enough for you to continue the assessment of that language. Now I'm gonna want to resume and show you some of the images on the English assessment.
Beehive.
Beehive.
Apple. Bridge.
Now here's another interesting thing on an update that we recently released on BAPA. Speaking of updates, one fabulous thing with BAPA that you don't get with other assessments is once you've purchased BAPA, the app is yours. You own it. You don't have to buy the new update, the new assessment. Like, when they release an assessment for articulate language, once they release a new thing, you have to trunk your old one and spend a whole bunch of money on the new one. With BAPA, it's that money. We're constantly making updates, constantly adding new features, and the update comes in free of charge, 100%. So it's that one fee for a lifetime use of BAPA. But here, I want to show you bridge. We have a cluster bridge. Clusters are very tricky. And we are able now with BAPA to specifically target each sound within the cluster. So let's say if he said bidge, we tap cluster reduction, B was what he said, and now the word became bidge. I'm gonna tap on it again to make it green to say there was no error or accidentally mark that error. Let's say he said bwidge, it was gliding. We tap gliding and look what happens, bwidge. Let's say, oops, go back there. that the student said, tridge. I know it's an unusual error, but we can mark substitution, and now we able to specifically target. So the D became a T, so we're going to mark T, and then the R remained an R, tridge. This is really giving you, as an evaluator, a lot of power to basically mark any errors that are of importance for making a decision, making a recommendation for therapy. I'm gonna go and show you a few more images.
Bubble, bus, cages, carrot.
Now what I want to do, as opposed to continue the whole assessment here, I am going to show you what happens with the complete assessment that I had performed earlier to save time, and I'm going to tap here on home. But before I do that, notice here that we started this assessment. At times, I've had this happen when I cannot continue that assessment at a given time. So the student's not having a good day. You did 2 words, you already did a whole language assessment, and you start to do an artic and you see that it's not going well. Once we tap on that home button, the app actually saves the specific place where you completed, where you left that assessment off. Next time, or a week later, when you come, the student comes again for that, to resume that assessment, you tap here and the app remembers that this is exactly where you left off. You pick it right back up, and in a matter of minutes, you're done. As opposed to, whoa, which word was the last one that I assessed? Let me flip through the whole thing. Here, it takes you automatically. The app will remember that, and you are all set. But now I want to select a different student. This student is from Puerto Rico, and he was bilingual. We're able to assess both languages. And here on the screen, you can see the results. You can see the raw score. For Spanish was 76, for English was 126. For the standard score was 96 and 113. Confidence interval, and you have also the percentile rank for each language. Immediately after the assessment, you will know if you're in a school district, the student is qualifying for therapy. If you're in another setting, you actually have that information handy to immediately, if you want to, discuss with a parent if the parent is present during the assessment. Now let's take a look at preview results. When you tap on preview results, this is the section by position in the word. You have Spanish words, initial, medium, and final. Then you have English words, a percentage, initial, medium, and final. So the app is actually comparing both languages. Then we have manner of articulation. You have the specific sounds. So you see that 85% of the abutting sounds were correct. Then for Africans, we have a really low accuracy of only 25%. And this is in Spanish. If you scroll down, you can see the Africans in English are 62%. Both require some attention. Then we can take a look at the voicing features. If you have students that are devoicing, you can immediately see the difference here. Then the great section that I love, this is my favorite section. You have all the words that are targeted in both languages, Spanish and English. So for example, here we have baño for Spanish, B initial was initial consonant deletion, and B for beehive in English was also an initial consonant deletion. You have the table for both languages to compare the words to see specifically which sound was not produced correctly. Then we have the multisyllabic word probe, which we do towards the end of each language. And then look at this gorgeous graph of individual errors showing, for example, that 16% was initial consonant deletion in Spanish, 25% in English word cluster reduction. Now I'm gonna go back here and I'll show you the beauty once you tap preview report. This is a fabulous report automatically written for us SLPs that includes, in this case, information on the dialect of Puerto Rico. The Puerto Rican Spanish has some peculiarities, including like deletion of final S and the L and R in the final positions, these things are appropriate for their dialect. So we wouldn't be considering this a disorder of articulation and phonology. And we do this for every single dialect that you saw in that menu. So if you have selected Venezuelan dialect, we're giving you information on that dialect. We know that even during bilingual SLP, like me, we don't know all the different nuances of the different dialects. If you are in Texas, for example, you're assessing the majority of the students from Mexican background, but here and there, you will have a student from a different country, and you really need to know information on that specific dialect. Then, if I scroll down, you see tables and information on all that was assessed and an automatically placed signature with information here for you to print. You can attach that to your report, or you can copy and paste this into your computer IP that you have for your school district. BAPA has truly changed the way we think of assessments. BAPA is being used across the country by hundreds of bilingual SLPs. I hope you join them in using this tool that will save you enormous amount of work and time when you're performing assessments in the students. This way you can focus on what matters most, which is helping our students. Thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Barbara Fernandez, and the application is called BAPA, the Bilingual Articulation and Phonology Assessment.